Gentleman yields back. I'll now yield to Ranking Member Raskin for a brief closing statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Online, everybody's making fun of this Seinfeld impeachment, an impeachment hearing about nothing, apparently, 2 days before the government is about to shut down. But I want to say that all four of these witnesses have done a great service for us, not just the Republicans, but for the Democrats too. And I want to thank them for their patience and their intellectual honesty and their surprising consensus on the key questions today. This process might not be such a whipping post, Mr. Chairman, if we heard from actual fact witnesses, which is why I'm so dismayed by the party line vote, not to call Rudy Giuliani or Lev Parnas to testify. Now, if the majority is abandoning the Ukraine Burisma theory, which used to be the heart of the investigation as I understood it, then it's clearly we don't need them. But if you're not abandoning that, we absolutely need to hear from them. It's not the complete absence of fact witnesses that troubles us so much today. It's the complete absence of facts. When I started out as a young assistant attorney general, I went to court. I remember on my first day of work, and I heard a judge lecture a lawyer by saying, "Counsel, you have forgotten the very first rule of being a lawyer, which is when you go to court, don't forget to bring the evidence with you." And I'm afraid the majority forgot to bring the evidence with them today. And our GOP colleagues are frustrated, and I know why. Their own witnesses don't agree with them. At least a dozen GOP members on that side of the aisle on the committee have already called for impeachment of Donald Trump. And yet these three expert witnesses called by the majority have all agreed that there is not a sufficient quantum of evidence that would justify impeachment of President Biden. And it's not Professor Turley's fault. He's a constitutional law professor. I don't know if they looked across the country for other constitutional law professors. I don't think you could find one who would say that there's a sufficient quantum of evidence. Maybe John Eastman, but I think he may be detained these days. The fact is that this hearing has been dominated by the word "if," as many people have said. It's been filled with hypotheticals. And I'm a law professor, so I'm not averse to them. Imagine a world without hypotheticals. But you don't impeach a president based on hypotheticals and based on obsolete conspiracy theories. Finally, Mr. Chair, I just want to say we've talked a lot about Ukraine today, kind of elusively, indirectly. We've talked about the beleaguered Burisma theory. We've talked about Rudy Giuliani and Lev Parnas and their travels there. We've talked about the Ukraine shakedown. But while we were debating all of this and mentioning Ukraine, there was a very important debate going on in the House floor because the Republican majority in the House Rules Committee has advanced an amendment to delete $300 million from the Defense Appropriation Act, which will go to provide military and strategic security assistance to the people of Ukraine who are struggling to defend themselves against Vladimir Putin's bloody invasion and imperialist attack on their national sovereignty and on the rule of law there. That war has involved mass kidnapping of children, and I would love to hear from some of our friends on the other side of the aisle with QAnon talk about the actual kidnapping of children that's taking place in Ukraine today, mass rape of women and girls, and mass civilian atrocities, bombing of civilian residences, schools, hospitals, and so on. And yet the pro-Trump, pro-Putin elements in the MAGA caucus, and I know that doesn't apply to everybody on the other side of the aisle, thank God, and I appreciate everything Ken Buck has been doing. These people are trying to cut funding for our democratic allies in Ukraine. And so the assault that began on Ukraine with Donald Trump's Ukraine shakedown, holding up security and strategic assistance to them until he lied about Joe Biden, that continues to this day in their efforts to cut off military and economic assistance to the people of Ukraine. We will be fighting that. I hope that we will be able to get separate legislation, and then the MAGA caucus won't have to vote for it. But in any event, the question of Ukraine is a very serious one, and everybody who stands up for democracy, freedom, and the rule of law has got to be on the side of the people of Ukraine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back to you.